Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to the Battles of the American Civil War with your host, Bang and Dang. Bang here, Dang over there to my right once again. And we are finally here to 1862, where pretty much every single day is a battle, and more times than not, it's going to be a Class A or Class B battle. So it means we got a lot of major battles going on here this year, and a lot of turning point in the year. I believe I counted in the first, from January 3rd to April 14th, the Confederates win one battle. The Union win all of them, or like 3 of them are inconclusive.
yeah.
Yeah. Union kicking ass. As we discussed last episode, ended up being pretty even throughout 1861, 21-20. Confederates won the battles by 1, so don't expect that for the next 4 years. Somehow, I don't know, all the ass kicking these guys did in 1862 somehow still went 4 years after this. Weird. Today, instead of the usual 3 battles, we got 4 battles coming up for you, which is going to be the battles of Cockpit Point, Hancock, Roan's Tan Yard, and Middle Creek. Starting off first, obviously, with the Battle of Cockpit Point, otherwise known as the Battle of Freestone Point, or the Battle of Shipping Point. Took place on January 3rd, 1862 in Prince William County, Virginia. It was part of the blockade of the Potomac River during the war. After victory at the First Battle of Bull Run, the Confederate States Army established a defensive line from Centerville along the Occoquan River to the Potomac. The Confederates used the Potomac's banks as gun positions to halt Union traffic on the river, protecting Manassas Junction to the west and Fredericksburg to the south, and to close the Potomac River to Shipping and isolate Washington. And they did it for a minute.
October 1861, the Confederates constructed batteries at Evansport, a CSA field battery located at the mouth of the Chippewampsic River, Creek, actually, where it empties into the Potomac, the Shipping Point, the Freestone Point, and the Cockpit Point. By mid-December, the Confederates had 37 heavy guns in position along the river. September 25th, 1861, the Freestone Point batteries were shelled by the USS Jacob Bell, commanded by Lieutenant Edward P. McCrae. And also the Seminole. We all have heard the Seminole plenty of times in the war so far. That's the first time Jacob Bell's been there?
I think so.
Seminole is commanded by Lieutenant Charles S. Norton. 1st of January, 1862, Cockpit Point was shelled by Anacostia, which is Lieutenant Oscar C. Badger commanding that ship, and the Yankee, which is Lieutenant Eastman commanding that ship, with neither side gaining an advantage, as usual, though Yankee was slightly damaged.
Of course, they were probably aiming for that one the most.
Right.
Get that Yankee. Union ships approached the point again on March 9th. A landing party from Anacostia and Yankee destroyed abandoned Confederate batteries at Cockpit Point and Evansport, Virginia, and found CSS Page blown up. The Confederates, in keeping with their general tactic of withdrawal from the seacoast and coastal islands, had abandoned their works and retired closer to Richmond after effectively sealing off the Potomac for nearly 5 months.
Right. There's only so much you can do, man.
This is obviously not much of a battle. The ships went in, it was like bing boom, and the battery was like boom boom, and that was it.
Prince William County opened up the Cockpit Point Battlefield Heritage Park at Cockpit Point in 2017. The park will preserve 113 acres, including a 93-acre natural area with a pond. The park area has 16-acre gun battery site along the Potomac River, including cannon emplacements. Oh, that'd be cool to see.
Oh, good for them. Yeah, that wasn't much of a battle at all, but like we said, we do every one of them.
Right.
The Battle of Hancock, next up, was fought during the Confederate Romney Expedition, which we'll have more on that in a second, on January 5th and 6th, 1862, near Hancock, Maryland. The first time Maryland's brought up in this war. In late December 1861, General Stonewall Jackson of the Confederate States was tasked with defending the Shenandoah Valley in the state of Virginia.
Yep.
Between his own Valley District and Brigadier General William W. Loring's Confederate Army of the Northwest, Jackson had about 7,500 volunteer soldiers, as well as about 2,200 militiamen, and roughly 606 cavalrymen.
He did. He had himself a nice little army.
A force he viewed as insufficient to hold the valley against the Union Army,
Because the army had like 15,000. After writing to General Joseph E. Johnston, General Jackson received permission to attack the Union position at Romney, Virginia, before Union troops received additional reinforcements. He's like, we got to do it now.
Yeah.
Jackson also intended to capture the towns of Bath, Virginia, and Hancock, Maryland. Although Johnston may not have known about the portion of the plan,
Why? Oh, Jackson didn't tell him. He was like,
About Bath and
Right.
Hancock. The movement for the campaign began at 6 o'clock on January 1st, 1862,
6 in the morning, up and
Right.
at him.
with Stonewall Brigade leading the way, followed by Loring's men. Other units, including the militia component and the Rockbridge artillery, fell behind schedule. Jackson's train did not move until 1600.
Damn.
That's late. That's 4 o'clock.
10 hours. So he sat there for 10 hours.
That's ridiculous.
The weather was cold during the march, and Lawrence strongly disagreed with Jackson's handling of the campaign. The Confederates reached Bath on January 3rd and skirmished with Union troops outside the town, but were unable to capture it.
Wow.
The next day, the Union troops abandoned Bath and retreated after a brief fight, escaping across Sir John's Run to Hancock.
There you go. Now you can have Bath.
After reaching the vicinity of Hancock with the leading elements of his force, Jackson ordered the Rockbridge artillery to fire on the civilian-filled town.
Oh, no.
In revenge for Union bombardments of Shepherdstown,
Well,
Virginia, in 1861.
they did do that.
The artillery fire began at about 1800 and continued to about 2300. Man, they went into the night, damaging some buildings but causing no casualties.
That's good.
That night, Union Brigadier General Frederick W. Lander arrived in Hancock to take command, and he planned for aggressive action against the Confederates the next day. He's like, shit's about to go down.
Wee.
Then we got the United States Union led by Frederick Lander and Stonewall Jackson on the other side. Don't know how many men.
Right.
Didn't say.
By the morning of 5th of January, 1862, the temperature had fallen to 0 degrees, which is 18 degrees Celsius for all you
Well,
Canucks.
or negative 18.
Yeah, negative 18 Celsius for all you Canucks. Where it would remain, or,
Everybody else,
right, everybody else in the world.
besides like one other country.
Where it would remain steady for the next 3 days, so just freezing cold temps, not to mention the wind factor. The Stonewall Brigade was brought up that morning, and Jackson aligned his men on Oryx Hill, across from the flooded and ice-choked Potomac River from Hancock. 9:30 a.m., Colonel Turner Ashby was sent across the river with a request for Lander to surrender. Yeah, you think he's going to surrender?
Right.
Jackson warned that he would shell and then capture the town if Lander refused. Upon meeting Lander, Ashby was instructed to tell Jackson to bombard and be damned,
Ooh.
and was given a written rejection
He's like,
of the offer.
I don't want this guy to just come back and tell you. I want to write it so you read my words.
I want you to tell him and then give him this.
Well, Ashby returned to the Confederate lines. Lander ordered that civilians leave the town and assigned the 84th Pennsylvania Infantry Regiment to serve as a fire brigade in case the coming bombardment started any fires. Yeah. The 110th Pennsylvania Infantry Regiment defended warehouses, and 2 pieces of artillery were positioned on a hill behind the town.
Uh-oh.
The Confederate cannons opened fire at about 1400, and a sporadic artillery duel, which inflicted no casualties, continued until dusk. So they're just firing at each other, wasting ammo.
Wasting ammo. A Confederate detachment under Colonel Albert Rust destroyed a bridge over the Big Cacapon River, belonging to the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. Oh, we don't want to mess with railroad folk. While another detachment failed in an attempt to destroy a dam upriver from Hancock. How do you fail?
Right.
Well,
It's not going nowhere.
Right. While Jackson opened January 6th with the bombardment of Hancock by the Rockbridge artillery,
Insurrection.
Lander still desired to take offensive action against Jackson.
Why wouldn't you?
Why, yeah, exactly. There's no casualties. He asked Major General Nathaniel P. Banks to either cross the Potomac in Jackson's rear or send him reinforcements, with which Lander would attack the Confederates directly. He was like, how about you just send me more guys and I just go straight in, bud. Banks had ordered Brigadier General Alpheus Williams' brigade to march towards Hancock on the 5th of January, but sent the request for offensive action through Major General George B. McClellan, who viewed it too risky. And he was like, I reject.
No, sir. Not today. Later that day, Jackson attempted to cross the Potomac at Sir John's Run, but was repulsed. Having damaged the telegraph lines in the area, Jackson abandoned the attempt to take Hancock on January 7th and withdrew. The exchanges of artillery fire had caused little damage. The National Park Service estimates that the 2 sides combined suffered about 25 casualties during the fighting, which doesn't mean deaths.
Right.
Just injured.
Right. The Confederate retreat was made difficult due to low wind chills
I'm sure it was.
and the failure to properly shoe the command's horses before the campaign. You gotta shoe your horses.
Shoe your horses, man.
Jeez. And half their men probably didn't have shoes.
Right.
After halting at Unger's store in Virginia on the night of January 7th and 8th, Jackson learned that Union forces from Brigadier General Benjamin F. Kelly's command had defeated a Confederate outpost at Blue's Gap as a diversion in support of Lander. While Jackson was informed of the Union withdrawal of Blue's Gap after the fight, he viewed it as possible that Union forces at Romney pose a threat to Winchester and decided to move against Romney.
So he sees a little A little opportunity to slip in there, huh?
Right.
Poor weather kept Jackson's force stuck at Unger Store until January 13th, but the Confederates then advanced to Romney, which was evacuated by the Union soldiers on the 15th. Jackson relocated to Winchester with the Stonewall Brigade while leaving Loring to hold Romney. Loring complained to the Confederate government about Jackson's handling of the campaign and being left in an isolated area with his troops while Jackson was in Winchester. And Confederate Secretary of War Judah P. Benjamin ordered Romney evacuated on January 30th.
Really?
Jackson resigned over the affair, but was talked into rescinding the resignation by the governor of Virginia, John Letcher. Loring received a promotion and was transferred out of the region.
Oh, jeez.
Dang. These two did not get along.
Right. Jeez. A unit of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal National Historic Park is located along the Potomac near Hancock. Includes several signs commemorating the battle. The town of Hancock and the Confederate artillery positions can also be seen from the site. Hancock held commemorative events for the battle from January 5th through the 7th in 2012. They only did it in 1 year? Wow.
I think it might be the
beginning of a tradition.
what would be the anniversary?
That would be like what?
150th?
Something. Right. Although many of the battlefield features are still intact, including 2 churches damaged during the fight.
Well, you didn't say it was divided by U.S. Route 522.
Oh, the battlefield is divided by U.S. Route 522. Why? Why would they do that?
Well, they built a road through it.
Yeah, I guess. I wonder how many bodies they build a road over top.
Damn, they still, right. They still, I don't know how many they found when they were digging the road. Although, still intact, including 2 churches damaged. Good.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, none of the battlefield has been listed on, that's why they built the road. None of the battlefield has been listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Although a 2010 study by the American Battlefield Protection Program determined that 415.616 acres may be eligible for listing. About 50 acres of the battlefield are owned through protective stewardship, including tracts owned by the National Park Service and the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. Why isn't that protected?
Right.
That seems kind of silly.
You think everything would be, right?
They're like, sometimes, well, there was no casualties, though. Yeah, right. There was no casualties, so I think that's the only time it gets protected.
Well, there were 25 casualties.
There was 25 injuries.
All right. Moving on. The Battle of Roan's Tan Yard. That's a hell of a name. The Battle of Roan's Tan Yard, also known as Battle of Silver Creek, was a minor battle fought during January 8th, 1862, in Randolph County, Missouri. When the American Civil War began in early 1861, the state of Missouri was politically divided, which we all know.
Yeah.
Despite being a slave state, it did not succeed. Although Governor Claiborne Fox Jackson supported secession.
He did, indeed.
An attempt by Jackson and his
He's also
pro-section.
the only governor to serve in battle.
Right. An attempt by Jackson and his pro-secession followers to move against the St. Louis Arsenal was thwarted on May 10th, 1861 by Brigadier General Nathaniel Lyon of the Union Army. In response, Jackson formed the Missouri State Guard as a pro-secession militia unit and appointed Sterling Price to lead it, and we all know what they did from there.
Yes. Well, Lyon chased Jackson and Price into the southwestern portion of the state in June, where Price was reinforced by Brigadier General Benjamin McCulloch and his Confederate States Army unit. On August 10th, Lyon attacked Price's and McCulloch's combined camp, but Lyon was killed and his army routed in the Battle of Wilson's Creek, which you guys can go back down the archives and check that out.
Right.
Price followed up the victory by leading the Missouri State Guard on a foray north towards the Missouri River, culminated in the capture of Lexington, which you guys can also go check out in the archives, which happened in September. Not our episode, but the Battle of Lexington.
Right. In mid-October of 1861.
And that's Lexington, Missouri, not Kentucky.
Right. In mid-October of 1861, Union troops concentrated against Price, who then retreated back into the southwestern Missouri. November 3rd, while at Neosho, Jackson and the pro-secession state legislators, who had previously been evicted from the state capital by Lyon, voted to succeed and to join the Confederate States of America as a government in exile. The anti-secession elements of the state legislature had previously voted to remain in the United States.
So they officially in the Confederate? No.
I don't think so.
Well, I think they are.
Right. The Missouri State Guard.
No. State legislators that were pro-secession, which the governor is too, so they're probably both viewing it as
right.
Missouri's ours on both sides.
Right.
In December, well, wait. We got the Union Army commanded by W.M.G. Torrance, which had the 1st Missouri Cavalry Regiment, the 2nd Missouri Cavalry Regiment, the 4th Ohio Cavalry Regiment, and the 1st Iowa Cavalry Regiment. On the other side, we got the Missouri State Guard, led by John A. Poindexter. And obviously, we have Missouri State Guard recruits. They have 1,000 of the Missouri State Guards, only compared to 450 to 500 of the Union. So, how's this going to go?
Yeah, we've seen
right
numbers like that before, and nothing happened.
In December, Price sent recruiters into the central portions of Missouri in the hope that men would volunteer to serve in his command. An additional goal was to raid the North Missouri Railroad on the night of December 20th. Several hundred men volunteered for the raid on the railroad and damaged a 100-mile stretch of it by burning bridges. Thousands of Missourians joined Confederate supporting units in the period after the raid. The Missouri State Guard then formed a camp in the vicinity of Yates, Missouri, in Randolph County to attract and train new recruits. That's what you got to do, man. But hey, come with us on this raid real quick. See how we operate. And you could do the same thing with us.
Right, easily. Watch and loin, mofos. Watch and loin. While scouting near Silver Creek in 1862 of January, Union Major W.M.G. Torrance of the 1st Iowa Cavalry Regiment learned of the presence of a Missouri State Guard camp in the area. While Union authorities had been aware of the existence of the camp for over a week, its location had not been previously established.
How do you learn of it over a week?
Right. And still not know where it's at. We know there's one around here somewhere.
Well, how about you send some
scouts out there,
and look for it?
The Missouri State Guard outpost was under the command of Colonel John A. Poindexter. An 1864 source estimated that Poindexter had 1,000 men on hand. 8th of January, 1862. Torrance decided to attack Poindexter's camp, collecting together detachments from his own regiment, as well as the 1st and 2nd Missouri and the 4th Ohio Cavalry. Nice. Got some guys on horses. Torrance began preparing for an attack. He's like, we got him.
Yeah, I would say. Something's happening here, huh?
He's like, they got 1,000 men on hand, but I got a decent cavalry. They can do some damage.
Doesn't matter how many men they have. They're obviously all mostly recruits, so what the hell are they going to do anyways? National Park Service estimates the Union column strength at about 450, while the 1908 history of the Union Army gives a strength about 500. I mean, that's a little tit for tat there, isn't it? About 4 miles from the Missouri State Guard camp, Torrance deployed his men. 1 battalion of the 2nd Missouri Cavalry and 1 company of the 4th Ohio Cavalry were to draw Poindexter's fire, while elements of the 1st Iowa Cavalry and the 1st Missouri Cavalry were conducting a mounted charge. Ooh, mounted.
Oh.
They're going.
Yeah.
3 additional companies of the 2nd Missouri Cavalry were to attack from a different direction.
Oh. The attack hit around 1630, with fog on the field. Initially, the Missouri State Guardsmen held out, using the fog and the terrain as cover.
Yeah, it's probably not a good idea to attack in fog.
Right, it's rough. With the two sides trading volleys. Torrance broke the stalemate by sending 4 companies, 3 of which were from the 1st Iowa Cavalry, to charge Poindexter's line. This threw the defenders in confusion, and the camp was captured after a fight of only 30 or 40 minutes. Large quantities of supplies and equipment were taken from the camp. Poindexter's surviving men fled, using the fog to cover their retreat. In his official report, Torrance stated that he had sent 2 companies to block the Missouri State Guardsmen's path of retreat, but the fog and the terrain thwarted the attempt, allowing their escape.
Yeah, likely excuse. After the battle, the camp was destroyed, as it should have been. With the camp unusable, Missouri State Guard recruiting activities in Randolph County ceased. Coupled with another defeat at the Battle of Mount Zion Church, which will be coming up.
Right.
Or no, we already did it.
that.
Yeah, last episode. The setback led to the reduction of pro-Confederate activities in central Missouri region. Yeah, they thwarted all their little Missouri plans.
They didn't put enough effort into Missouri, the Confederates didn't. I don't think they really wanted to. That's why the Missouri State Guard.
Missouri was the 3rd most fought in state.
Right.
In the whole war, after Tennessee and Kentucky, I want to say.
Pennsylvania, probably.
I think it was Kentucky. Or Pennsylvania, one of the two, but definitely Tennessee. And you barely hear anything from Missouri. No major moments or battles even happened, you know?
Right. You think Maryland and Virginia would be the major...
Virginia, that's what it was. Virginia and Tennessee were the top 2.
Right.
And then the 3rd is Missouri, though. I mean, we have had a lot of Missouri. This whole first year was Missouri and Virginia, pretty much.
We're going to get a couple...
We haven't even really got to Tennessee at all.
There's a couple Pennsylvania battles, too, that are major.
Well, the big one. Estimates of casualties suffered in the action vary. Torrance estimated that between 80 and 100 Missouri State Guard soldiers were killed or wounded, and reported the capture of a further 28. National Park Service and the Modern History Francis H. Kennedy Place on the modern history. The National Park Service and the modern historian Francis H. Kennedy placed Poindexter's loss at a total of 80. So Torrance was right. Estimated between 80 and 100.
Right. The hell out of here.
These stiflers.
Yeah, I know, jeez. Union casualties are generally reported to have been either 4 or 11.
Hey, that's a big discrepancy.
Right. Although one source places their loss at as high as 27. The site of the battle is privately owned and is not commemorated on site. Although a museum is nearby in Huntsville, it provides interpretation of the action. A 2011 study by the Civil War States Advisory Commission determined that 1,329 and 2 1/4 acre of the battlefield are likely eligible to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places, but they won't.
Probably not.
The same study determined that the land use at the site was relatively unchanged when compared to the time of the battle.
So whoever bought it,
most of that land is...
Yeah, that's right. Nice. You step on it and exactly what it would look like in 1862. It's crazy.
Would be.
And leads us to our last battle of the night, the Battle of Middle Creek, which was an engagement fought January 10th, 1862 in eastern Kentucky. We got 4 different states, 4 different battles here today during the war. Obviously, it was the only battle personally commanded by future President James A. Garfield, who was then a colonel in the Union. More than 1 month after Confederate Colonel John S.
You notice how that's the only one that gets future president and not Grant?
Grant. I think they did when they first introduced him.
Maybe.
More than a month after Confederate Colonel John S. Williams left Kentucky following the fight at Ivy Mountain. You can go listen to that. Brigadier General Humphrey Marshall led another force into eastern Kentucky to continue recruiting activities. From his headquarters in Paintsville on the Lavisa Fork of the Big Sandy River, northwest of Prestonsburg, Marshall recruited volunteers. He raised a force of more than 2,000 men by early January, but could only partially equip them. So, why did you raise a force of 2,000 men then?
Right, and only be able to give some to 100.
Right. As previously noted, James A. Garfield himself commanded this little party we got going on here, consisting of the 8th Brigade, 18th Brigade, which consisted of the 14th Kentucky, the 27th Kentucky, the 1st Kentucky Cavalry, and the 40th and 42nd Ohio.
Okay.
About 2,100 men over there.
And they actually had weapons and equipment.
And Humphrey Marshall on the other side got the 5th Kentucky, the 54th Virginia, Jeffress's artillery battery, cavalry companies of Cameron, Clay, Holiday, Shaw, Hahn, Stone, and Thomas.
A lot of cavalry.
See, this is what the difference, too, about the Union and Confederates. They named, their companies and stuff after who was commanding them.
All right.
Where you see these guys over here, they just made a name after the states they come from.
Which is how an army should be.
Right. Well, they got about 200 or 2,500 men.
And they had 2,500 men, but they probably had an actual 1,200 with weapons.
Somewhere around there, I would imagine.
Jeez. Union Brigadier General Don Carlos Buell directed Colonel James A. Garfield to force Marshall to retreat back into Virginia.
Yeah, you better get him out of Kentucky here. Buddy.
Right. Leaving Louisa, Kentucky.
That sounds like a movie or something.
Right, leaving Louisa. Leaving Louisa, Kentucky, Garfield took command of the 18th Brigade and began his march south on Paintsville. He compelled the Confederates to abandon Paintsville and retreat.
He compelled them.
Right. And retreat to vicinity of the Prestonsburg. You leave Paintsville. Where are we going to go? Go somewhere in the vicinity of Prestonsburg.
Get out of there.
Garfield slowly headed south, but swampy areas and numerous streams slowed his movements, and he arrived in the vicinity of Marshall on the 9th. I love how all these different paragraphs have different words I like to use over and over again in the same paragraph.
I know.
Vicinity.
Future president. Heading out at 4 a.m., and they've been doing military time, and then now it's just 4 a.m. Heading out at 0400 on January 10th, Garfield marched a mile west near the forks of Middle Creek, fought off the Confederate cavalry, and turned west to attack Marshall. Marshall had put his men in line of battle north and east of the creek near its forks. Garfield attacked shortly after noon, and the fighting continued for most of the afternoon until Union reinforcements arrived in time to dissuade the Confederates from assailing the Federal left.
Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm. See,
well, how come the unions are always getting reinforcements and the Confederates are not?
They don't have them. They're in these areas recruiting.
Right.
That's why.
Yeah. Instead, the Confederates retired south and were ordered back to Virginia on the 24th of January. They're like, just come on back. Garfield's force moved to Prestonsburg after the fight and then retired to Paintsville. Union forces had halted the Confederate 1861 offensive in Kentucky.
They did.
And Middle Creek demonstrated that their strength had not diminished.
Yeah, they're like, didn't you learn from the last Lexington and all that stuff that we own Kentucky?
Right.
Even though Kentucky's not part, well, they technically are still part of the Union.
Right.
But, yeah, we own Kentucky.
Right.
Suckers.
Yeah, Confederates can do nothing with Kentucky.
Battle of Middle Creek, along with the Battle of Mill Springs, more than a week later, which will be next episode, cemented Union in control of eastern Kentucky until Confederate General Braxton Bragg, who is most known as Fort Bragg, which I believe they're renaming because it's a Confederate, launched his offensive into the summer and fall of 1862. Following these 2 January victories in Kentucky, the Federals carried the war into Tennessee in February. Tennessee action. October 1992, the battlefield was designated a National Historic Landmark by the National Park Service.
Okay, look at that. All right.
And some, like we like to do at the end of the episode, some notable behind-the-scenes, not battle stuff. We've been following this for a couple months now. January 1st, 1862, Confederate commissioners captured on the British steamer Trent continued their voyage to Europe, ending the Trent Affair. If you recall, they got captured by some Unions, and in order to avoid war with Britain, they gave them back.
Right.
I'm confused as why the Confederates were going to Britain in the first place, though. They're trying to, like, strike up some little deal with them.
They got to.
Does Britain never help out? Do they ever send stuff?
Yeah, Britain helped out south. They helped as much as they could. The French, I think, helped out the north or the south.
French.
One of them. Yeah, the French
I don't
helped
know
out
if the
the
French
north.
helped out to anybody.
Yeah, there was Frenchmen.
Are you sure?
Yeah, it was Frenchmen.
I know they were in the Revolutionary.
No, they were Frenchmen.
Most European leaders were unimpressed with the Union's legal and constitutional arguments, thought it hypocritical that the U.S. should seek to deny one of its regions the same sort of independence it won from Great Britain.
Right.
Dude, I think Confederates had more...
Right. I think Confederates had
more stuff. British was helping them out. The cotton in the British economy. Yeah, because they got cotton from the South. That's why.
Right.
Okay. Canada. Union successfully recruited some Canadians. France. Officially neutral through the war, never recognized the Confederate States of America. It did recognize Confederate belligerency, though.
Yeah.
Well, there was Napoleon at the time, too, so that guy is a piece of shit. So it's not like France was even... Napoleon realized the war with the U.S. without allies would spell disaster for France, so he wouldn't get involved there.
No.
Mexico...
Yeah, they had, like...
And the Confederates had a close relationship with Mexico.
Right. Whatever Frenchmen were that living in the United States...
They probably was with the Union.
With the Confederates. And they wore their little French uniforms. I'm telling you, watch. It's either in Gettysburg, I think it's Gettysburg, or Glory, where there's some French guys in French uniforms. I think it's Gettysburg.
Well, okay. He maintained diplomatically correct relations with Washington, but he didn't really like them. Half the French press favored the Union, while the imperial press was more sympathetic to the Confederacy. Public opinion generally ignored the war, showing much more interest in Mexico. Because at the time, you forget, the French are down in Mexico trying to take over that fucking place. So, yeah. Prussia did not participate. However, several members of Prussian military served as officers and enlisted men in both armies. Okay. Russia was generally cooperative. Support to the Union, largely due to the view that the U.S. served as a counterbalance to the British. They just like, these guys can take care of the British, so we don't have to do anything here. Brazil, nominally neutral, was an unofficial ally of the Confederacy. Austria were hoping for a Confederate victory. The Ottoman Empire favored the Union.
Yeah, of course.
The Netherlands favored the Union. Italy... Seems like they favored the Union.
They did.
And Tokugawa, Japan, looks like they favored the Union because it was good for trading. And then Siam, wherever that is, he offered to send war elephants to the Union for their own military and logistical use.
Nice.
The offer arrived at Lincoln during the Civil War, to which Lincoln declined, stated American climate would not support the domestication of elephants and that the steam engine would suffice.
Yeah.
Which he was probably right. I don't think you want to be herding elephants through snow and shit.
No.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess, but the Union didn't really have big support.
No.
Through the big countries besides Russia.
And Russia, only reason why.
So they're like, they can keep British on
Right.
off of us. Interesting. I guess I never really looked that up before. Learn something new every day, don't you? Also, on January 1st, 1862, Union General John Schofield pens a letter to his soldiers to refrain from destruction, plunder, and theft of civilian property.
Which nobody ever listened to. Jeez, Pete.
Well, I'm sure some did.
We should, if we really want to, we can get into the stories of their abuse and the Southern abuse on Northern.
All of them.
They're disgusting people.
And wrapping it up with
Savages.
January 9th, 1862, David G. Farragut, a Union flag officer, is given command of the Western Gulf Blockading Squadron.
Good for him.
David Farragut.
Yes, he had a good party that night.
I'm sure he did. And that's going to do it for us. 4 battles on this episode. Cockpit Point, Hancock, Battle of Roan's Tan Yard, and Battle of Middle Creek, Kentucky. We had a C, a D, a D, and a C battle coming up here. 2 Union victories coming up. 2 Union victories, 2 inconclusives. And then we have a little nothing battle at Lucas Bend, Columbus, Kentucky, coming up January 11th. And then we have 3 B battles in a row: Battle of Mill Springs, Battle of Fort Henry, and Battle of Roanoke Island.
Shit's about to get serious, guys.
Yes, sir. And then after that, from February to March, end of March, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 A's, 4 B's, and a C all in between there. And all of those but one are Union wins. Yeah, we got some stuff about to come down. And then, of course, I think what we're all leading up to here is the mid-July romper in it's July, right? Or June?
For what?
The mid-July or June romper of Second Manassas.
Manassas.
Where's that? 1863. No, Second Battle Bull Run, August 28th to the 30th. Which the Confederates in August are in four battle route there. They got Battle of Manassas Station, they win. Second Battle of Bull Run, the Battle of Thoroughfare Gap, and then they Battle of Richmond. Again, we get another Richmond, Kentucky. Confederate go on a little run, and then they get stopped.
Yeah, it's over with.
We got a lot of stuff coming up for 1862, guys, so stay tuned and make sure you go do us a favor, too.
No.
Go to Apple or Spotify and leave a review or leave a rating and get us in the algorithm. If you guys are enjoying the podcast, enjoying what we do, leave us a comment or any of that. Subscribe, all that. So we got a decent amount of subscribers on Spotify.
Yeah,
haven't really checked Apple, but
go to our Outlaws and Gunslingers, do the same thing too.
Exactly. I was just about to say that. We do another podcast about, I guess you'd call it true crime, but more like American history in the crime genre. We covered Prohibition. We covered Wild West. We covered the Unabomber, the Oklahoma City bombing, the Jonestown massacre. Right now, we're in the middle of the O.J. Simpson trial. And we got a lot more stuff coming up, including probably a good hefty amount of time spending on the Mafia coming up pretty soon around the corner. That's Outlaws and Gunslingers, wherever you guys get your podcasts. Go check that out. Subscribe or leave a review and a comment over there as well. We'll be back next week for probably the battles of Lucas Bend, Columbus, Kentucky, the Battle of Mill Springs, the Battle of Fort Henry, and the Battle of Roanoke Island. Roanoke. Wasn't that the one that was like abandoned?
Roanoke? I think it was, wasn't it? It's like the oldest civilization, isn't it?
Roanoke or Jamestown, one of them.
Jamestown.
Yeah. We'll be covering that next week. We'll see you then. We're the Monthly Michiganders with
Bang Dang.